Mount and Blade 2 Bannerlord has a plethora of skills to choose from. Whether you want to be a town trader, bringing butter to the far corners of Calradia, or a mighty horse lord of the open plains, the world is your oyster. If you're just getting started, it might be difficult to gauge which skills are worth picking up, or maybe you don't quite understand how to get experience in a skill. Whatever the case is, I got you covered. I'm going to be starting a new series of guides aimed at cracking open the mystique behind the skills in Bannerlord. But to start us out, I wanted to give you an overall tier list for Mount and Blade as is in version 1.07. Of course, this will probably change the closer we get to launch later this year, and maybe even sooner, and I'll be updating it when we probably get on launch and things change anyway. But in my typical fashion of upfronting the knowledge within my videos, here's the entire tier list that I've built out. Let me explain my reasoning because I have three sets of criteria I looked at when determining the placement on this list. For one, I asked myself, how strong is the overall skill and associated perks? And this is kind of a no-brainer, but I looked at how the skill performs on not just a single facet. Take a combat skill like a bow, for example. Is it good in all types of battle maps? What are the limitations, etc.? Secondly, how effective is the skill to the main character, your character? And there are some skills that are great, but just aren't great for your main character or intended future character. Engineering would be a pretty awesome example of that. And lastly, how easy is it to level? If the skill is great, but just doesn't have a reliable way to level, then it becomes tedious and you won't want to invest into it. Before we get started, one thing I want to point out is that if you're playing Bannerlord, or if you just started playing Bannerlord, you should play the character you want to play. Don't min-max. This is absolutely a game of role-playing and playing as maybe, a two-handed axe-wielding Sturgian berserker or a Battanian Fiend on foot. Whatever it is, play the way you want. This list is just meant to talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses of each skill line, while also being a fun discussion piece for people that maybe have played through the game a few times. I mean, even though I've got roguery in the D tier here, you can still absolutely use roguery, have fun with it, and assume a roguery style of gameplay if you want to roleplay like that. There's nothing prohibiting you from doing so. So I just want to make sure that if you have something in mind, you saw this tier list, and you're like, well, shit, I guess I'm not going to play roguery anymore. Please don't think that. So if that's all you wanted to know, feel free to head out, but before you do, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe if you enjoy this type of content. I can't tell you how much that helps the channel out. Let's get started here on our Bannerlord skills tier list. So to start us off, we're going to talk about the D tier of skills. And this character I've done a lot of manipulating using the console commands, so a lot of their skills and stats won't make any sense. Please try to ignore that. It was done for a stream. And the way we'll divide this video up is by each respective tier, starting first with engineering. Now, engineering is a really good skill line, but I find that it is so hard to predictably increase the skill, and I find it is a skill that just is way better on an NPC or a companion within your clan than you yourself. Because like I said, there are great skills here, right? Like you take a look at this one, can craft fire versions of siege engines, the ability to set up camps quicker, increasing the accuracy of individual siege pieces. All these things are very, very good, but the way you increase engineering skill is by building and operating siege engines and successfully using engines in sieges offensively or defensively. If you think about it, especially in the early game, that's not going to be happening at a very reliable rate. And in addition to that, it's going to be pretty minuscule how much damage you can actually pour out to get the siege benefit. And when it comes to building and operating siege engines, the army has to assign you as the engineer. And if you don't have enough engineering skill, it just won't even happen. You're better off just recruiting an actual companion to take care of this skill for you. Another one here is roguery. Now, roguery is interesting because it is, in theory, a really cool skill line. It's one that you would really want to have because I would want to play through the game as maybe a roguery style of character, doing some skullduggery in castles or in the actual town themselves. But unlike any skill in the game, there is no real true gameplay attached to roguery. Yes, you can raid caravans, you can pillage and raid villages, but for the most part, there's no real true campaign mechanics attached to this. But it looks like we might be getting something like that when you look at stuff like, where is it? Crime decreases 20% faster because, who cares right now? There's one here for armor, increase the armor provided by civilian body armors by 10. Bonuses over here, 10% increased damage with civilian weapons. So hopefully in the future, we'll see something where using civilian weapons and armor in towns with the roguery tree actually has a benefit. And on top of that, in the more recent patches, roguery has become a lot easier to increase. Raiding, recruiting and leading bandit troops, infiltrating enemy towns, and then giving bribes and escaping from captivity are all great ways to increase roguery. But again, there's just not too many great things that you can get from it. It does have a nice passive benefit of increasing your battle loot. And here at the very end, increase loot amount by 1% for every skill point over 200, which is pretty cool. I mean, if you look at it, by the time you get it, you get 75% bonus immediately, which is pretty nice. But going through this is pretty annoying. The second one though, Deep Pockets, double the amount of betting you can use in tournaments. That can be quite nice if you're talking about the early portions of the game, and if you want to do a lot of bandit uses or using bandits in your army, you can get some cool benefits. But you're better off using leadership to turn those bandits into noble units. Another skill here though is scouting, another one that is very brutal to level up. So the way that you level up scouting is you spot tracks and you follow those tracks. So the larger the track, the arrow on the actual map, the more experience you get over time. Also, you can travel through difficult terrain. But it is, again, a strong skill line. But it's one that is just way better served recruiting the companion, the wanderer in the tavern that has the highest scouting, which I think is like 140, because you get all the benefits of someone starting all the way 140. It's about right here. Well, yeah, 125. We'll say Ranger. You get these first perks immediately, and you don't have to kind of labor through this. I find that it is just not one that is worth leveling on your own, and the reliability of leveling it is very tedious, right? You have to spend a bunch of time on the campaign map just following tracks around to get experience. You can do that. I just don't find it particularly fun. Now, the last skill to talk about in the D tier is smithing. Smithing is in a weird place because although it can be used to abuse money in the game, right? You can go through this and just pump out a ton of really valuable items and then get a ton of money, but they've kind of curtailed that back in 1.7. I just don't find it particularly interesting or engaging enough for it to mean a whole lot to you as a main character. I find it better to, again, pick up on a companion that already has it so you don't have to slog through the early levels. I will say though, if you do a certain, I guess you could say, cheesing of smithing, you can get a ton of experience very quickly and just jump up through this skill tree. But from a thematic standpoint and from the ability to only craft weapons and not craft armor or anything else of custom kind of worth, I find that smithing is in its current iteration very lackluster. I think hopefully down the line, or even with mods, it could become something very cool with an expansion maybe into armor or maybe even just cooler looking weapons. But as it is right now, smithing is just not an awesome skill. Moving into the C tier, we get, again, some interesting skills that have just kind of an odd place in the game. The first one is tactics, which actually does have a lot more uses than you might think, but I find it, again, another skill that is really well placed on a companion that you then set out to go start their own party. Because the big bonus of tactics is that it gives you an advantage when you do a simulation. A simulation would be essentially a quick battle where you don't actually do the fight itself. The game simulates the fight for you and it gives you the results. So unless you're willing to do a ton of those, it might not be worth jumping into tactics. Tactics does have passive benefits here. Simulation advantage plus 20% because of my current skill. Decrease the sacrificed troop number when trying to get away. And you can see that in order to increase the skill, you have to do those simulated battles and then winning battles at difficult odds. So even if you don't simulate it and it's like, let's just say 500 versus 400 and you're the 400, you'll get tactics experience. So that is a great way to get tactics. It's just, again, not a very reliable amount. In addition to, you can get it from escaping from encounters by sacrificing troops if necessary. So kind of a little hard to gain reliable amounts of tactics, better suited on a companion that is leading their own army. But when it comes to the skills, there are some great perks. The first ones are great. Loose and tight formations. Your infantrymen deal 10% more damage to cav in simulations, or your troops receive 25% less morale penalty from casualties when using shield wall, square, skein, or column formations. So that's great if you are joining an army right? Which you'll be doing a lot in the early to mid game. And that really nice there because it means any of your infantry units are going to take less morale penalties. But some of these other ones, increasing party size, your army loses cohesion 5% slower, or this one over here, parties that you have called to your army move 10% faster while moving to the army, and 15% less influence required per party to call to your army. Those are really great perks that are awesome in the mid to late game when you're leading armies more frequently. So I find tactics to be quite strong as you get up into the latter portions of the game. Now, another one here is crossbow, which it's probably of all the skills I've dabbled the least in because it is a very tedious weapon to use. And they have kind of had to deal with a bunch of issues with how damage computations work with bolts, which crossbows shoot. So you can ride a horse with a crossbow. It's just kind of funky, right? So I find that the crossbow, for all it does, I just find the bow to be more useful. I think crossbow soldiers are very strong, but you, the character, I find a better use, and I find bow gameplay to be more fun overall. So you can honestly say that crossbow is a personal opinion as to why it's on C. I don't have any opinion either way between main character or a companion using it, and its reliability of leveling up is just the same as it would be for bow. I find that the ability to use a crossbow as fast as a bow, though, makes it a little bit slower to level up, and I find its overall skill perks to be just fine if you're using a crossbow. I just don't overly find that crossbows have as wide a use as bows, and we're going to get into those much later in this video. Our last skill to talk about is throwing, and let me start off by saying throwing is stupid strong. You can outright gib a character and just kill them. It's a very strong skill, but it is not reliable to have all 4 of your equipment slots stocked up with throwing weapons, because then that gives you what, like I think total of 24 some odd throwing weapons, something like that. And in order to really get the most advantage out of throwing, you need to really push down the line to get stuff like this. You have 1 ammunition for throwing weapons. Getting that increase to your ammunition really helps you out here because you are going to be having 4, 5, or 6 stack throwing bundles. So if you have 2 on you, 8 goes to 10, right? If it's got 4 on it. So you really need to kind of push through the skill to make throwing worthwhile. Otherwise, you run out of ammunition so quickly that its high usability is just more of like this is a cool nice to have for a thematic build for a character, and less of something you would focus entirely around how your character's damage output works. Versus bow, the other skill in the cunning line, your entire character could be based around bow and do tons of damage with maybe a single sword if you wanted. You just get so much more usability, in my opinion, out of bow than the other 2 cunning or control skills. Moving into our B tier, we've got trade. And trade is actually a really good skill if you want to be a trader. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this skill line. It's got great perks, and it's really a great main character skill if it's the type of character you want to build out. If it's not, and you just want a character that's going to run caravans for you, just put it on a companion. There's 1 or 2 companions that have high trade skill and stewards, so they can go and run caravans for you. And really the big winner here in trade is everything has a price. You can now trade settlements when doing barter. So you can just straight up buy a settlement from someone if you push yourself through the trade skill, which is actually cool, right? So you can be a trader and create a trade empire, because in order to make your own kingdom, you need to own a settlement. And you can now use this to just simply push yourself all the way through the trade skills, get to everything as a price, go and buy a settlement, and then create your kingdom out of it, which I really love thematically and roleplay wise. And there's really strong skills in here. Recruitment of minor factions into your clan is 20% cheaper. So when you do actually create that kingdom, it's going to be a lot easier to do so. So you'll get 30% reduced ransom offers. Your caravans return 5,000 gold when destroyed, which is nice. You get the ability here, or where's the one for workshops? Workshops gather trade rumors, meaning you can get a little better of a sense of what is going to trade better or worse in certain locations without having to go around and learn about those rumors, which is really nice. Hiring mercenaries is 20% cheaper. So there's a lot of great things you can do from this. But I think that trade, roguery, tactics, and engineering all kind of fall into something that I think need to be created in clans as a whole. We already get it with engineer, and we already get it with quartermaster. and with Scout. But I think that there should be a Spy Master that allows your character to contribute to your clan using their roguery skill. And by character, I'm sorry, I mean companion. So a companion can contribute to your clan using their roguery skill. Tactician gives you some sort of bonus to your clan if you have someone set in your tactician. Or trader, make this, master of the treasury, whatever it is. I think that they should expand upon the companion roles because it makes these ones that are very thematic have more application outside of the main character and the companions that can then use those skills to help benefit your clan, because roguery, tactics, and trade don't really benefit the clan outside of very specific use cases of, again, a companion running a caravan here or a companion running a party here. Roguery, nothing that I'm really aware of. I guess you could argue roguery can help out if they're leading an army too to go raid things, but still it's neither here nor there. Our next up is Polearm. Now, Polearm is also a very strong skill, but I find it very, not useless, but very limiting. You really only thrive in open battle maps. And in the mid to late games, you're going to be jumping into a lot of sieges, and you really only going to get advantage of this if you're on horseback or you're trying to do a thematic, you're like, okay, I'm going to be a character on foot and I've got a spear to stab into horses, because you can now brace with certain length spears. If you jump into a siege, I always swap a polearm off. It just, if you're using maybe a Rumphalia, it's going to get blocked by a wall. A glaive is going to get blocked. You need to use maybe a Manavliaton to give you that kind of short reach but high devastation that a polearm can do. So while the polearm skill line is very strong and it's just devastating on horseback, I find that it just can't do well enough outside of being on horseback and open battle maps. Nothing else is wrong with the skill line. It's a very strong skill line. It's just kind of limited. Lastly, here we have leadership. Now, leadership is stupid strong. And the only reason it's in B tier is because I think that for a lot of people in the early portions of the game, they're going to struggle to raise it up. The most reliable way to increase your leadership is by joining into a existing kingdom, becoming a vassal, and then having one of your companions create a party, have that party then join you because it costs you 0 influence to do so. And that's the most reliable way to increase your leadership. Leadership is really, like, I would say, a high B, low A tier skill because it is so strong. And honestly, it could probably stand to be in the A category, to be totally honest. But it has so many good abilities here. If you look at increase party size by 5 for each town you control. 20% less influence needed to call parties, which is great. Increase the rate of recruiting melee prisoners by 50%. Increase garrison size by 20. Where is the other one here? Additional 8 morale at the beginning. 2 experience per day to all troops in the party. Increase the rate of recruiting ranged prisoners by 50%. And then troop experience gain while fighting in simulated battles is increased by 20%. Couple that with tactics, it works so well. +1 companion, which is awesome, but each tier 6 troop increases party battle morale by 1 up to 10 at the start of the battle. And every skill increased after 250 gives you +1 party size. So that gives you a huge party as you get larger. It's really the only way to reliably get a large army, right? It's the only way you can really do it. Steward is not going to do it on its own. You need leadership in conjunction with Steward, which is in our next tier. But Leader of the Masses here. Also, heroes generate shared experience, which is great. It's just, I personally find it to be a very, very strong skill line, but you're going to struggle to raise it in the early game. You're going to struggle to really raise it reliably in the mid game, and you have to wait to the late game to really have it take off. And even then, you have to be very diligent about getting it higher and higher and higher, because it is so crucial to the late kingdom portion of Bannerlord. All right, we're in that top bracket, in that A tier, and our first one is Medicine. This one is one of those skills that's great on you or a companion. You can be the medic, the surgeon for your party, or another character can be. And it's one of those ones that is so strong. If we take a look at its passive benefits, Casualty survival chance is increased, healing rate is increased for heroes and troops, and then your healing rate is increased if you're the governor. And all of these things are so important, and especially if you look at some of the skill perks. Increase character hit points by 5. That's not a big deal, but character heals 30% of lost health points after each battle, which is massive. It allows you to jump into another battle immediately if you so need to. Otherwise, you have to force a simulation. Even the second one here, increase heal rate by 15% when mobile in the world map versus this one, which increases the heal rate by 30% when stationary in the world map. So these two are such good perks that kind of help to add to your playability of the game, or ability to kind of recover from large battles in which you can jump into another one again. They're so huge. Or this one here, Doctor's Oath, medicine recovery chance applies to enemies too. So this helps you get more prisoners, either to convert them into your army, to sell them, or to convert them for influence, whatever it is. There are just so many great perks. Resting in settlements increases heal rate by 20%. This last one is amazing. Your troops get 1 hit point for every 2 skill points above 200 medicine skill. So you have to look at a lot of these top tier skills, and we're going to be doing a tier list video on just those. But look at this. You get it at 275, meaning that you already have 75 skill that is going to immediately jump into this skill. So that means 37.5 health. I don't know if it's round up or round down. Let's just assume it rounds down. All of your units get 37 more health. That's great. That's great. So you can see how medicine can be stupid advantageous for you as the party leader, or you as or applying it to a companion. It has so many wide uses, and it is a little tricky to raise because you do have to basically get into fights. But as long as you're you're the surgeon, anyone dying on the battlefield, especially after you get Doctor's Oath, is going to help you increase this medicine skill. And you'll already be increasing your intelligence for Steward anyway, which is the next skill I want to talk about, because everyone needs Steward for large armies. And Steward and leadership need to work in conjunction for you to have a large army. The reason I haven't put it at S tier is because you can actually have a very viable quartermaster by marrying into one and have that person kind of take care of the skill for you. But you personally, it's still a great skill to have. To increase Steward quickly, all you need to do is have a ton of food variety. You can see right here, if I hover over at my morale, it says food variety plus 7. So having fish, dates, beer, all sorts of different food, increase that food variety. And in the early portions of the game, if you set yourself to the quartermaster, you will see your Steward experience go through the roof. And if I look at its passive bonuses, it increases its party size passively, obviously, by just having skill in it. So you can see right there, we have got 87 increase to the party size. That's 349 divided by 87 is around 4 troops here per point. I'm sorry, 1 troop per 4 points. Oh man, otherwise that'd be huge. And there's a lot of other ways you can get benefits too throughout the actual perk line itself, because remember, as of a couple patches ago, if you donate the armor to your troops, it increases their experience. Well, with Steward skill, you can donate weapons and then have it increase their experience. You can do this. Do not pay wages for wounded soldiers, which is, it sounds tyrannical, but it's quite nice too. 20% increased carry capacity for pack animals, which is great. Even the first one here, party wages are 5% less. That's so nice to have at the very start of that game, because party wages can gate you from getting into the tier 4, 5, and 6 units in your army. And lastly, look at this top tier one. Price of loyalty. Your party food consumption, wages, and combat morale loss decreased by 0.5% per skill above 200. So again, you get this at 275, so you're looking at 37% of a bonus right there out the gate. So really, really strong skill, one that everyone should have in their playthrough. Next up, we have two-handed, the second of our vigor skills. So two-handed is a great skill. It's really awesome on horseback. It's good in sieges, but not amazing. And I think the biggest shortcoming of two-handed skills is that there's just not enough two-handed weapons in the game. You're kind of limited in your use of either bastard weapons, either ones that can be either one or two-handed, which in my opinion are the best weapons in the game, or two-handed weapons that are relatively low in their availability. You can smith them, of course. It is obviously a choice, but a lot of the benefits too are not that awesome. I like the benefits more for polearm, one-handed, riding, and athletics more so than I do for two-handed. But there are still plenty here, right? Your kills with two-handed weapons have 20% higher effect on enemy troop morale and increase your prisoner limit by 10. Nice. Increases your your two-handed weapon damage by 10%. Infantry troops in the formation you're leading have their attack speed increased by 2%. So there are definite benefits here. I just personally find one-handed to be so much better than two-handed, but two-handed is still devastating, still has great perks, and can be used in sieges more effectively than polearm. So I definitely have it higher up here on the list than polearm. But that concludes our B tier. Let's jump into that S tier now. Wait, no, it doesn't. I lied to you. We have to talk about riding first. So riding here is crucial to a game called Mount and Blade, right? You'd think this would be an auto pick over athletics, but I find that riding is very strong, but again, hits a limitation when it comes to sieges, which you'll be doing in the mid to late game a ton. But it is huge to note that if you are, well, I mean, you will be probably playing predominantly on a horse. A lot of people choose not to if they're doing a very specific style of campaign, which I've done plenty of times before. Playing on foot is a ton of fun, exclusively on foot. But what you have to look at here in riding is this: mounted weapon damage penalty and mounted weapon speed and reload penalty. They start at minus 40%, I believe it is. You start with a penalty, and until you push your skill to a certain level, you will have a penalty using weapons and bows on horseback. So you have to get this skill raised up. And the skill will raise up very naturally throughout combat, and it's got a number of factors in which you can gain experience, and it's dependent upon how you've done damage. Did you just simply stand in one place and swipe with your sword and hit someone? You'll get, let's just say, 5 experience. Let's just throw a nebulous number out there. But did you hit someone at full tilt in the head and kill them instantly? Well, you're going to get now 20 experience. Like, you get more experience for hitting harder hits. Harder as in damage or harder as in difficulty, either one, because your momentum comes into a factor, all these things. And your riding increases your speed, your maneuverability, and the difficulty of horse you can even ride. Some horses are completely gated, like the really nice top tier horses you can't even use until you have the appropriate amount of riding skill. And riding gives you a ton of benefits to all of your cav units. So polearm and riding have that in common. They're going to benefit mainly any type of mounted cavalry style of unit, of course. And they also will give you benefits to horse archers. Like some of these here, decrease accuracy penalty by 15% for mounted ranged troops in your formation. Mounted archers in your formation deal 5% more damage, stuff like that. So you want to be mindful of these things for your characters that you do want, your companions that you do want to have being captains. So, hey, you know, riding might be an A tier, but if you have a companion you want to be a horse archer captain, it's S tier, because obviously you're going to need it because you want all these benefits for it. Its top tier here too is the Way of the Saddle. Increase your charge, damage, and maneuver by 1 for each 10 riding skill above 200. So that's going to give you what, 7 right there, right out the gate. So worth noting that it is very crucial to the game. I just find athletics to be even better. So now let's move into the S tier. And we'll start off with athletics since we just did riding. So no matter what character you play in the game, athletics is going to be crucial, because riding, it increases your top speed, you know, horse speed plus 55, but all mounts have pretty much a set speed. They'll always go that speed plus whatever speed bonus you get. Athletics, you will find that in the mid to late games, if you completely ignore this skill, you will move slow as hell across the battle map, especially when you're jumping into sieges, which I've said are going to be such a huge, crucial part of your latter portions of the game. And that is alleviated by the overall passive here, right? Weight penalty reduced by 37% and running speed increased by 37%. That's massive, right? 37.4. So you can see the correlation when we have 374 skill. But looking at just the first two, increase your max hit points by 5. Okay. Foot troops in your party gain 5 hit points. Those are cool things. But this one right here is massive. Decrease your armor weight by 15%. As you wear more and more armor, it's going to weigh you down more and more. This will reduce that by 15% at 50 skill, which is just great. So It's very crucial. And just like riding, athletics is going to increase as far as the captaincy goes for all of your foot soldiers. So anyone on foot is going to get a lot of benefits from this skill line. But there are just so many crucial skills here, right? Increase your vigor attribute, which is nice. Things is either control or vigor. One back here is endurance. But decrease fall damage taken by 50% and kick damage is doubled. You get increase your armor by 10% while on foot. And then Mighty Blow, you stun your enemies longer after they block your attack, and each skill point above 250 grants you 1 hit point. That's massive, right? You can take a look. If I hover over my health, I get quite a bit here. Mighty Blow gives me 124 extra health. Right there. You see the correlation, same thing, tells me. It's just glorious. So you get so much benefit from it. Even this one right here, A Good Day's Rest, increases your hit point regeneration by 10% while waiting in settlements. Foot troops in your party gain 10 experience every day while waiting in settlements. So you can couple this with stuff from Leadership or from Steward. You've got this one right here. Foot troops in your party gain 3 XP every day while traveling versus increase your hit point regeneration by 10% while traveling. You can see that 150 skill line is so important. So athletics is needed for every character in the game, hands down. Moving into one-handed, we have the king of vigor skills, in my opinion, because there are just so many use cases for one-handed. It's great on horseback, it's great on foot, it's great in sieges, it's great in arenas. Every time you're fighting someone with one-handed, as long as you've got skill in it, you're probably going to win if you're trying to do it properly. You could die from, not blocking the blow, obviously, but I find that one-handed with a shield is just so forgiving compared to polearm or two-handed, right? And again, like I've said before, in my opinion, bastard weapons are the best weapons, ones that you can swap back and forth between one or two-handed to give you a little more extra oomph. But just like with two-handed polearm, bow, and crossbow, you'll also find correlating skills to specific units, right? So this is going to increase cavalry troops in the formation you're leading have their melee damage increased by 5%. Or infantry troops take 4% less damage while in shield wall formation. But look at this too. Shield bashes now deal 50% more damage and stun your enemies for longer. You can move quicker with them, increase your combat movement speed by 5%. It's just such a great overall skill. And of course, you would increase this simply by attacking people with your sword. Your athletics and your chosen combat skill will increase at the same time. Because if you're moving and shooting a bow, you'll get more athletic skill and you'll get more bow skill if you kill someone. It's kind of a fun thing to know right there. But it is just such a strong skill line. And every single one-handed, two-handed, and polearm, they get this type of skill. Each skill point after 250 grants you 0.2% attack speed increase with one-handed and 0.5% damage increase with one-handed. So we get quite a bit of damage increase on all of this, right? Two-handed gets it, polearm gets it, at the same thresholds too, and same rates. But I just find that one-handed is always the king of melee combat. Just as bow, our next skill, is the king of range combat. You can just shoot so fast, so accurately, and you have so many arrows at your disposal that bow is so useful in sieges, it's useful in battle maps. I just find it to be probably one of the best weapons in the game. Of course, you can't use it in close combat, but you can kill anyone coming up close to you pretty quickly if you have the right skills and the right know-how when it comes to using bow. Even jumping into some cool stuff like this, Eagle Eye, you can zoom in 50% more with bows, making siege warfare really fun because you can snipe people out of individual siege equipment or just pick off people as they try to mount up onto walls. It's a lot of fun. Personally, I find bow to be one of the most enjoyable portions of this game when it comes to siege warfare, because you can really kind of control what's happening by killing people as best as you can. Also, you get stuff like this, Horsemaster. You can now use all bows on horseback, so that includes longbows, which you would not use otherwise. Decrease the penalty to movement speed for reloading by 50%, increase your damage with bows by 8%, decrease mounted accuracy penalties by 30% while using a bow, which is something you would natively have with riding, without riding, I mean. Then the last skill, each skill above 200 grants 0.2 and 0.5, just like you got with the close combat skills, right? But this threshold starts at 250 instead. And personally, I find that like a mounted horse archer with one-handed is the strongest kind of early build in the game to understand how combat works and everything like that. If you go with that right out the gate and you've just started out, your character will be very strong from early all the way to late game. It's a little bit of a struggle here in the early game because of the changes they've made with writing and these innate penalties, but you'll pick up quickly how to kind of dodge those how to deal with those penalties, and you'll have a great backup with one-handed. I just think they're just such strong skills. Now, the last skill I want to talk about is the new charm perk skill tree. And I've already made a video about how this one immortal charm is so not broken, but it's just very strong. And you can reliably raise charm, and it doesn't really have any benefit on other characters other than the main character. Relation increase with NPCs by 143%. So you get very quick relation, and you can raise it very reliably by simply, okay, you attack someone and you capture the noble. Well, just simply release the noble. You'll get a ton of relation. You can go break people out of prisons. Boom, you get a ton of relation. Ton of charm. You can do simple barters with other nobles. You'll get a ton of charm. And it is what you'll be using to bring people into your clan, to get a wife, whatever it is, to help manipulate the kingdom diplomacy of the game, and using stuff like Immortal Charm, which is going to give you influence, which you'll use to enact any kind of civil policies you might want. Maybe you want to vote on a castle, but most importantly, in the earlier portions of the game, if you're a mercenary, you can use influence to help give you, look at that. So my mercenary contract's giving me 3,200 a day because of my amount of influence. The influence, you can see, Immortal Charm is giving me 7, whereas my mercenary contract is draining 18. Expected change is 11. So you can get a lot of influence gain from the other perks in this tree and Immortal Charm in addition to that. Like, let's see some other ones here. 50% less influence cost to initiate kingdom decisions, which is so huge when you run a kingdom. Increase any relationship gain with same gender by 20%. 10% better chance of double persuasion success, which is crucial when you're trying to recruit a wife or find a wife. Increase influence gain from battles by 30%. So there's a lot of really great ways to manipulate a lot of portions of the game using the charm skill perks. And at that, it brings our video here to a close. So hopefully this helped you out in getting a better idea of what skills are not necessarily overpowered, but just particularly strong in almost every facet of the game, and what skills maybe are better suited to just simply companions until they get more treatment or a better use case, maybe more gameplay mechanics, whatever it is. And as I've said before, guys, please don't look at this list as, hey, I should never make a smithing or roguery or engineering character. I do not think you should not do those things. That's a double negative for you, so I'm confused. But what I'm saying is make the character you want to make, sort it out in the end. You're going to play through the game multiple times. Bannerlord is built upon the notion that you want to have multiple playthroughs, but try different skills, different approaches. I mean, for the longest time, I only made knight-style characters that use polearm and one-handed in riding. Then I decided, well, you know what? I'll use a guy on two-handed, on foot with bow and arrow. And it was the most fun I've had in Bannerlord in ages. Well, that was a long time ago. I've done tons of things since then. But still, try as many skills as you can, break the game, but this is just a fun talking point. So I'd love to see what you guys think. Would you move maybe riding into an S tier? Would you put throwing up into A tier? Or do you think that steward's really just not that useful? Always you put it on a companion, put it into D tier, whatever it is. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Like I said, this is mainly an opinionated list based off of my anecdotal experience playing the game. So I'd love to hear what you guys think, and let your opinions be known about any complications you're finding with raising some of these skills. I know that the developers read Reddit, forums, watch these videos, read these comments, so they'll want to know your feedback. If you say, hey, yeah, I totally agree with you. Roguery, great skill in theory, but it just is not reliable to raise skill-wise, and there's not enough gameplay mechanics around it, so I think it should be in that D tier. Let it be known in the comment section, but as always, be respectful and concise with your criticism of the game, guys. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one, and take care.